Thank you, Richard. Yeah, so I'll give a quick overview of what we've done, some of what is going on right now, and what's next. It's it'll be a very quick review, and basically we'll go on to what's happening. And I'll make mention of some of what will happen at this particular forum as well. CTU generally works in 5 different areas, and our ICT harmonized policy formulation is one of the key areas. We do it in spectrum management, we do it in internet governance, and other areas as well, where we try to get the Caribbean to work together to pool resources and so on. So our internet governance activities falls squarely in the first set of core activities. The capacity development has been mentioned. We coordinate regional projects and represent the Caribbean at different fora. And since 2005, which is when the first CIGF was held, and it was held shortly after the CTU was requested to address internet governance issues for the Caribbean, and that is in the context of the Caribbean nations attending the second and final session of the World Summit on the Information Society in Tunis in, I think that was November 2005. So we held the first CIGF to basically get Caribbean opinions as to some of the things that were happening. And I am happy to say that I was present at the first one. I have not been present at all 15, but probably at least 13 of the 15 I've been there for. And here we are today. But since 2005, we've been looking at formulating regional policies, right? Getting common Caribbean views, common Caribbean priorities, and identifying Caribbean priority issues. All of us who do work in the internet governance space realize that it is a very broad area. And we realized from the outset that, we need to prioritize what are the areas that we focus on. Back in 2005, the clearly major focus then was infrastructure development. Today in 2019, that is not as clear in terms of being first priority. We now have so much penetration in terms of ICTs that there is great impact from all the applications and services that are on the net and in our connected world at present. So we'll be discussing some of that this afternoon in terms of reviewing what are our current priorities and whether they are fit for purpose in taking us forward for the next 15 years, or the next few years anyway. And we've also sought to promote and accelerate internet development and use in the region. And we've done that through project development and through capacity building. So we formed this particular forum, the CIGF, which is non-hierarchical, it's multi-stakeholder, it's convened by us at the CTU, but we don't own it in that sense, and there'll be a lot more discussion about that as we progress through the day. But there is no hierarchy associated. All the stakeholders can come in here and participate on an equal footing. We focused on harmonizing internet governance policy, as I mentioned, and identifying priority matters. An advantage of having a convener like the CTU, however, is that the reports of the CIGF have a pathway to influence the government policymakers in terms of action. So even within the CTU's hierarchy, we have an executive council and we have a conference of ministers that from time to time we can pass our recommendations to and get possibly at least some attention at the national level of our member governments. We've said it before that this was the first IGF, so clearly ours is more than just a preparatory meeting for other IGFs. But we do see the sense in enhancing the synergies between what we are doing here and other IGFs nationally in the region and on the global scale. And we've been working on enhancing that over the past few years. This is our 15th Internet Governance Forum. We've mentioned that we've created the Caribbean Internet Governance Policy Framework, first published in 2009 and subsequently updated twice. Part of our work in this forum is going to be looking at the vision and mission and priorities in there to basically review them. 15 years, one is a good milestone for us to reflect and see if we need to change path in any way as regards the environmental conditions. Multiple workshops on internet governance issues. And Albert mentioned we signed an MOU with ICANN, but we also have MOUs with several other of the internet stakeholders, the technical community, and so on. Some of them are mentioned there. Having said that, I remember one needs to remain cognizant that there are sometimes some people participating who can't necessarily read the slide. So say the particular points. Like ISOC, ARIN, LACNIC, Packet Clearinghouse, and the NIGPR is the CCTLD in Puerto Rico. So even in Puerto Rico, we've had collaborations with other Caribbean non-CTU members as well. We've contributed to global IGF proceedings, and we've enabled the establishment of multiple internet exchange points around the Caribbean. And we'll hear from representatives of the 3 Internet Governance Fora in the Caribbean in terms of their recent reports of their activities. We've done other guideline documents on things like IPv6 conversion and IXPs. We've created, in collaboration with the OAS and the Commonwealth Secretariat, Caribbean Cybersecurity Policy Framework. And we've gone further to create an actual action plan for Caribbean cyber security and cybercrime, for which CARICOM Impacts, that's the Caribbean Implementation Agency for Security, is the lead executing agency. Currently, what we're doing is we've taken the approach of trying to foster the development of national level multi-stakeholder groups. So examples might be national IGFs, ISOC chapters, task forces, IT managers for development, computer societies, and so on. And basically interface with them and use them to help implement at a national level activities that we recommend from the regional forum. All right, and things like progressive awareness and education campaigns, advocacy in various policies, the establishment of security response teams, CERTs and CSERTs, strengthening our country code top-level domain operations, and also in implementing any specific projects, for example, enhancing IPv6, DNSSEC, and so on. The secure extension for DNS. Going forward, we are continuing what we're doing. We continue our thrust towards national IGFs and communities. We're going to work with our Caribbean stakeholders in promoting implementation of our policy recommendations. And we'll be reviewing some of those to some extent during this 15th forum. We'll work. We've proposed, and we'll be discussing it again today, actually, appropriate mechanisms for sustaining our Caribbean forum. All right, I wouldn't get into it too much now, but because we'll have an opportunity this afternoon to discuss it some more, but that's one of the things that we want to institutionalize, more or less, a sustainable mechanism for continuing our Caribbean regional internet governance work. And continuing to enhance linkages with other IGFs. Very happy to have the UN IGF Secretariat participating with us today. And we'll continuously review our priorities going forward, continuing strong collaboration. For our 15th CIGF, we'll have liaison reports immediately following me. And then we'll discuss some of the key current issues in internet governance, both today and tomorrow. And this afternoon, we'll be reviewing our current Caribbean vision, mission, and priorities, and taking on board your recommendations. Basically, what we ask, what can you do as participants and following in the room and online? Basically get involved and make your voice heard. The biggest, I don't know if they call it surprise, but revelation for me when I first got involved with internet governance work was that all stakeholder views are invited and welcome, regardless of whichever stakeholder you are, regardless of how small your organization is or what government you are. All are invited and welcome. And you can follow us on our CTU website. There is a section on internet governance that we plan to make a bit more active in the coming months. You can actively participate in this CIGF, and at any time you can write to our CTU CIGF mailbox, I guess, where at CIGF@ctu.int, where we can take on board this is at any time in between fora and so on. We'll be trying to also step up our intersessional work. So this is where we are, and you now have a sense of what we'll be doing in this particular forum as well. And I'll say thank you very much for your attention at this point. All right, so we're now at the point where we're going to take some updates from our various regional, national IGFs. And the first one I have on the list here is Mr. Anand Teelucksingh from the Trinidad and Tobago IGF. So we'll invite Dev to come forward. I know he was the TTMAG chair last year. I'm not sure what they call him this year, but please welcome Dev. All right. So, just put it on.
Okay, hopefully it won't break anything. Thanks, Nigel, and a very good morning to everyone. It's great to be here at the 15th Caribbean IGF. It's a wonderful milestone. So just to introduce myself, my name is Anand Teelucksingh. I'm from the Trinidad and Tobago Computer Society, and the Trinidad and Tobago Computer Society is a member of the Trinidad and Tobago Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group. And the Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group, just to give some background behind that organization, is that it's the purpose of it is to be an independent entity for the promotion and development of best practice policy standards for the .tt country level, top level domain, and the local internet ecosystem in the interest of the internet community. And we have several objectives here: to serve the needs of any community of interest and the local internet community in the context of internet evolution, in particular education, internet standards, public policies, and so forth. We also want to promote activities consistent with .tt's role and purposes in Trinidad and Tobago, and to generally encourage the above objectives through projects and initiatives to increase awareness and local participation, and to represent the local internet community at conferences and meetings. So the MAG is as a multi-stakeholder advisory group. It has various stakeholder groups and we have academia, civil society, commercial / business, government, technical community / ICT, civil society, and the .tt CCTLD holder. And one of our big projects that we have been doing is the Internet Governance Trinidad and Tobago Internet Governance Forum. And we have had now 3 Internet Governance Forums, and we had this year, we had the 2019 Internet Governance Forum on January 25th, 2019, at the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce. And the process, just to give an idea about how the process worked, was that the MAG started asking, well, its members in the MAG, as well as a public call for topics of interest as to what you want to see discussed at the Trinidad and Tobago IGF. And we received several comments online, and we then finalized an agenda and then worked to make the TTIGF happen. So the TTIGF had three panel sessions, one on Caribbean data protection regulations, and we had panelists from the Caribbean Institute of Cybersecurity, from Microsoft Trinidad and Tobago, a person from the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, as well as an attorney at law from Lex Caribbean. We then had a second panel session on the cultural factors in the Caribbean affecting trust and privacy for digital security, and that we had persons from Ernst & Young, from the CARICOM Impacts, which is the Caribbean Community Implementation Agency for Crime and Security, I think, and a person from Republic Bank, Trinidad and Tobago. And our third session was in using technology to increase trust in public institutions. And we had some persons from the Judiciary of Trinidad and Tobago, from IGov TT, and from a person from the EquiGov Institute. And then we also had an open forum where anybody could ask questions, not fitting, or wanting to ask furthermore feedback from those three panel sessions. Many of the persons that attended, including the CTU Nigel, was there, and a few of the faces in the room were also there. And it was, also through the kind support of those various organizations. I see ISOC, ICANN, and LACNIC, that really helped to make that event happen. In terms of the numbers, we had about 85 persons in the Chamber of Commerce room, and about 200, the live stream of the event on that day, we got about 300 views, so which is quite good. And we had some interventions coming in from remote participation as well as on the floor. One of the things we had done this year also, we got students, we invited several students from 2 schools to attend the IGF, and it was good to see that by the time of the open forum, the students themselves were starting to ask questions, and in fact, even disagreeing with or questioning some of what the panelists said earlier. So, which was a very good sign. And we had a sort of ceremony where certificate ceremony where we awarded them certificates for participating in the Trinidad and Tobago IGF. So the final reports for the IGF should be posted soon. We have not finalized that as yet, but we hope to have that published very soon. And we now have to start looking at our next IGF. One of the things we are working on is two things. One, we want to try to have the IGF in a different location than in the West. We want to bring it, get to other places in Trinidad and Tobago. So we want to find another place where we can have that, the next Trinidad and Tobago IGF. And the other thing is that we want to try to get more of the organizations and more not so necessarily more training, but more involvement in leading up to the IGF. And one of the things we had done before was that we had a remote hub for the Global Internet Governance Forum, which was held in Paris in November. And representatives from the MAG went there to convey outputs from the previous Trinidad and Tobago IGF. at that meeting. And what we have also tried to do is also to try to give some education feedback. So because one of the feedbacks, let me just say, one of the feedback we got from the IGFs afterward was that coming into the topics just so was kind of jarring, and it would have like some sort of background information or understanding behind the topics before the panelists were talking about it. So we're exploring ways in which we can do that. And what we had also done last year, we had done an Internet Governance 101 event where we tried to explain, what exactly is this Internet governance thing about? And Jacqueline Morris was very instrumental in helping that event happen. We had it at Naparima College. And we're now looking at other ways we can do that. Should we do more of those types of sessions? Should we do more online type of conferencing or webinars type of thing? So that's all being discussed. So just to say that the Trinidad and Tobago MAG is open to all organizations wanting to join and help further its mission and be involved in the planning of the Trinidad and Tobago IGF. So I think I could stop there. Yeah, right now. Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dev. So the first example of national level Internet Governance Fora in the Caribbean, and we'll hear a couple more. The next one we'll hear from is actually in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and our participant is online, Miss Roxanne John, who chairs their Internet Society chapter there in St. Vincent. Roxanne, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, very well. Very well. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. Good morning, everybody, and to the wider media. And thank you so much, Nigel, for your introduction. And the SVG IGF, St. Vincent and Grenadines, thank CTU for giving us the opportunity to report on the national IGF and any suggestions or recommendations for wider regional harmonization. Now, I am the president, as Mr. Nigel said, of the Internet Society St. Vincent and Grenadines chapter, which is the Secretariat for the national IGF. On Friday, April 12th, 2019, the SVG IGF conducted its second IGF. And as you may recall, we had the first IGF in April 2018, and at that inaugural event, we presented an award to Ms. Bernadette Lewis in recognition of CTU's leading role in organizing the Internet Governance Forum and her role in facilitating such event. Now, our main objective, which is quite similar to all the IGFs in the region, is to create an open, all-inclusive, multi-stakeholder platform to discuss internet governance issues and policies in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the Caribbean region by and large, globally. For this year's forum, we target the community college students so we hosted the event at the SVG Community College. The coordinator for the DIGF was Mr. Willis Williams, able assisted by Mr. Marcellus Constance, who are all board members of the chapter. We applied an all-inclusive approach to organize and manage this event. So we have members of the chapter from various stakeholder groupings, including the lecturers and employees of the college, involved in ensuring the success of the event. Also, a web page was created actually in 2018 following the first event at our website. So we have igf.isot.vc to invite ideas from the community on the various topics for IGF 2019. The event was held in the afternoon, 1:30 to 3:30, very short, under the theme, the pressing need for security in the Internet of Things. We had about 26 persons participating, of which 16 persons were students of the college. Of course, we had a bit more participated in the network session, which was after the forum where we distributed snacks. Our main sponsor was Internet Governance Forum Support Association, IGF SA. And this is the second year in which they were providing financial support. We thank them very much for that. And we had a recording greetings from the chairman, Mr. Marcus Kumar. The forum was moderated by Mr. Kerry Kaur, also a member of the chapter, and it was live streamed. Recordings can be found on Facebook, and it will be placed on the website and also on the YouTube channel that we have. Now, you may appreciate that the Internet of Things is impacting our lives and its businesses is in one way or the other, and this has posed several challenges, especially security, that we must carefully pay attention to. So the forum has 3 main presentations, and I'll just briefly highlight them. The first presentation was by Mr. Wayne Hurl. He is a country manager for Flow St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and he has been a manager for the past 4 years. He spoke mostly on artificial intelligence, its issues, and how it has been utilized by organizations such as Google, Amazon, Facebook, and he even drew reference to where it is used even for elevators. Now the second presentation was done by Mr. Sean Soy. He is a corporal of the Royal Simpson and Grenadines Police Force and has over 10 years experience working as a police officer, mainly in the IT department, and has been trained in cybersecurity. And he elaborated on what IoT is, how it works, and how it can assist in the transformation of crime fighting in St. Vincent and Grenadines. And one of the things that he recommended, which I find was quite good, is a need for households to adopt a policy for the use of the internet for children. The third presentation was done by Mr. Gusham Dick, and he would have presented on behalf of the country manager, Digicel, Ms. Fanta Williams, who had to respond to an urgent matter that afternoon. Mr. Dick is a senior officer in Digicel, and he advanced 7 critical security challenges of the IoT. Following all those presentations, we had open forum where persons were given an opportunity to ask questions, and we even had questions from persons who were following the stream on Facebook. I would say two of the good takeaways of this forum, we had wider awareness of IoT within the region and globally, really. And we had participation of providers and even for the police force, because they have been focusing a lot on cyber security in recent times. And we also saw growth in the membership of the chapter. I will say in terms of recommendation for wider regional parties harmonization, of course, from our national perspective, we welcome such harmonization. Of course, that will add strength to the fora. At least each year we can know what each IGF will be focusing on, so there'll be no duplication and also a wider spread of the important issues, especially the Caribbean. And of course, the CTU is well placed to provide that leading role in the facilitation of such harmonization. And I'm sure once we have more collaboration, there's more strength in us advancing all the issues, or at least most of the issues that we need to draw attention to, individuals, to businesses, and it will continue to help spread the word day by day. So basically, there's a synopsis of what took place, and I guess I will await any suggestions or comments or questions.
Thank you, Roxanne. We'll see if we have time for discussion at the end of it. So thanks very much for that. Yes, Rodney is quick to come forward. Mr. Rodney Taylor is our next speaker, and he'll talk to us about the Barbados IGF and other initiatives that they are undertaking there in Barbados. Let me just see if I can get him set up here. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. I will zip through this presentation in the interest of getting us back on schedule. I'm speaking in my capacity as former chair of the Internet Society. I handed over the baton to Mr. David Smith we had elections and David Smith was elected. I served for 2 terms, which is according to our bylaws, the maximum term in any one consecutive sitting. So Mr. David Smith now serves as chair of the Internet Society. And so I speak in that capacity as former chair, and also I serve as the director of the data processing department in the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Smart Technology, which has been a key partner with the chapter in delivering on Barbados' first and second national IGFs. We also had, which may be of interest, the second youth IGF this year as well, and these were done in partnership with the several agencies, including the IGF Supporting Association of the United Nations. So it was our second national IGF held last June, and our second youth IGF held in March this year. The theme for the national IGF was "We want to hear from you," and that's the theme that we continued from last year. The organizing committee was chaired by Ms. Ashell Ford, who may be familiar to some of you. And we had an opening ceremony, presentation of awards, and well, just to say in the spirit of what the CTU did in honoring persons who have served for so long, we felt that it was good also to acknowledge the contribution of persons who have helped in the development of the internet and internet governance in Barbados. So in our first IGF, we actually honored Bernadette Lewis as well for her contribution at the regional level. And nationally, we honored a gentleman by the name of Mr. Alan Emptage, who is a Barbadian who developed the first search engine called Archie. The second year, we honored Mr. Ian Clark Worrell. He's one of the founding members of a company called Sun Beach. And prior to that, in several iterations, he worked with several companies, but he's credited with bringing the internet to Barbados. And I've asked permission perhaps during the break to run a short clip, which in 4 minutes gives you the story of his contribution during the coffee break. 2 days of this, we've had 2 days of discussions. We also actually acknowledge the contribution of this gentleman at the top, Mr. Charles Leacock, who's the former Director of Public Prosecutions in Barbados, who subsequently passed away. So we acknowledge he did a very, very intriguing presentation on the law and cyber security, cyber crimes, etc. We had 2 days of discussions surrounding child online protection, social media. We actually had the participation of Facebook rep at the time, cyber security, disaster recovery. We had contributions from, I think it was Sim Martin, who was the person who shared their experience in terms of the recovery from the aftermath of the hurricane last year. We had 150 participants in the room, and our online participation peaked at one time to 4,000 because in that particular session, we actually had the Government Information Service do some promotion for us for the live stream. So we had very, very good participation. In that session, we also had, as you'll see later, a representative from Estonia, the director of the Digital Identity Department, who came to participate and give a presentation on digital identities. Traditionally, we have a social event which takes you out of the room and gets you, helps you to really meet people who are working in the same space in a less formal setting. We have in terms of our sponsors and partners, the Internet Society, we thank Shernan Osepa for his support, and the government of Barbados. We actually went through the formal process of requesting a partnership with the government, and the Cabinet of Barbados approved, and so we were able to promote it as a partnership between the government and the Internet Society Barbados chapter. But it was multi-stakeholder in that we also got the support and we followed the process for engaging with the IGF supporting association. These are just some pictures from the IGF. Again, Shernan Osepa, our minister with this responsibility for innovation. Senator Kay McConney, who left this morning. Ashel Ford, the chair, the permanent secretary, myself. This is a panel discussion. I think this one was dealing with fintech, blockchain technology, etc. Moderated by David Smith of UE, Gabriel Abed, who's famous for his contribution with respect to blockchain technology, and several others. Actually, the last person is the rep from Estonia. And at the bottom, we have a panel discussion on gender and the internet, chaired again by Ashel, moderated by Ashel, who also runs a nonprofit called No to Online Abuse and Harassment. The representative there is actually from an organization based in the UK called Feminist Internet. These are more photos as well. The gentleman here in blue, he is a veteran journalist, David Ellis in Barbados. We talked about fake news. That's the panel on which Facebook made their contribution as well, which is, of course, a very trending topic now. And an issue of concern to us, which has led to a public discourse on the issue of regulating social media, which I see is on the agenda here as well. Okay, moving on. Oh, there you see Albert Daniels, stalwart as well, contributor to all of our IGFs so far. In terms of collaborations, we worked with, prior to this event and leading up to this event, we worked with Cisco. Cisco has a program called Girls Power Tech. It's similar to Girls in ICT. And it seeks to promote the whole issue of, well, young girls in particular, to promote an interest by that group in technology, and so that there is gender equality with respect to the use of technology. No to online abuse and harassment, and the feminist internet. Just some photos as well from the Girls Power Tech. We had about 30 participants. So this is one of the events that fed into the youth IGF. Some of these young women would have then participated in the youth IGF that followed subsequently. Some photos from the first IGF in 2018. Actually, that's the person opening there is a minister with responsibility for youth affairs. Our most recent one was concluded on March 22nd, 2019 at the University of the West Indies. And under the theme Smart Youth for a Smart Barbados. These are some of the agenda items discussed. We had an icebreaker activity. We used this tool called Slido, which allowed the audience to post questions and to vote and so on live, so you could see the results. And I have a screenshot from that later. What is digital and media literacy, and why does it matter, etc. And I'll share the presentation so that it would be available to you. We have a few video clips as well with the young people expressing their appreciation for the forum and their, appreciation for having the opportunity to be able to lend their voice to these important issues. So screenshot, we streamed live, of course, on Facebook. We also had a restream. Normally we would have the support of Internet Society, and they would restream the feed for us, record, edit, and so on, so that we have it available afterwards. This is the icebreaker session. And this is a screenshot from the Slido tool, which allowed the audience to participate. Because not everyone wants to get up and go to the mic to pose a question, but they can simply send the question up. It appears on screen, and the others can vote and express their views as well. Challenges in terms of governance, I think, is something worth discussing in terms of how we execute the event. I noticed that Trinidad and Tobago has a different model. They have the multi-stakeholder advisory group, and I think this is commendable. The chapter itself in Barbados, the Internet Society Barbados chapter, has played a leading role, and that is just how it has evolved because of the interests of the stakeholders and so on. But we think there's room for discussing the establishment of a MAG as well in Barbados, so that it's we try obviously to make it multi-stakeholder as possible, and we follow the tenets and principles of multi-stakeholderism. But there is scope for evolving it into a model that is similar to that adopted by Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, we want to promote multi-stakeholder participation, and hence why we want to move towards that model. The sustainability of the activities is an issue, or the sustainability of the forum itself. It requires a lot of time, a lot of effort. It requires financial resources. And of course, if you think in terms of sponsorship, it is not a commercial event, but we want to be able to demonstrate some value to organizations that have agreed to support it. These are just some other recommendations in terms of a secretariat to do the ongoing work. The reporting after the event as well is an issue in terms of we don't want to just produce what was said. We want to be able to condense those into firm policy recommendations. And that is it. We want also to be able to have those policy recommendations feed into the regional forum and into the global forum as well. What's next? We plan to have the third IGF this year in collaboration. We want to have a week of activities which will culminate in the national IGF, and we're in discussions with the CTU in terms of a possible collaboration on the Smart Barbados Week, in which we would have host the third national IGF, and that is it. Thank you.
So there's clearly some life in IGF processes at the national level in the Caribbean, which is wonderful to see. And we're going to go now to the slightly wider region, the LAC region, Latin American Caribbean. And I'll invite Mr. Kevon Swift to come forward to take us through this particular section. You're going to use these slides? Okay. Bring them up. So you're going to do a two-computer kind of thing. Should come up. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Great. As I was coming into the room, Lauren reminded me that when they announced the 15th Caribbean IGF, the first name that appeared on the registration list was Kevon Swift. So I just thought I'd try to live up to my name. But very glad to be here, very glad to be part of this process. And thanks to the yeoman service that Nigel, the CTU, has been doing in this, one of the oldest regional internet governance processes in the world. Today, I'm going to focus on two things. On the first hand, I'm going to talk about the evolution of NRIs across the region, which was something that we discussed at length last year in the LACIGF. And I'm also going to have a brief overview of some of the issues that we discussed in last year's meeting. LACIGF 11, we had it last year between the 31st of July to the 2nd of August in Buenos Aires, Argentina. It was the 11th such meeting. And why LACNIC? Ernesto mentioned earlier that we are one of the founding partners of LACIGF, two others being NUPEF, which is a research center in Brazil, and the international NGO, the Association for Progressive Communications. And to date, we continue to serve as the Secretariat to the LACIGF process. In addition to that, we have a vote as one of the stakeholder groups. We are one of the members of the technical community, within the steering committee of the LACIGF. So that's why we are here this morning giving this update. So going on to the point I made earlier about structures and evolution of NRIs across the region. In the lead up to LACIGF 11, we felt it's important to highlight some of the initiatives that have been going, analyzing what all of these IGF spaces have been doing. LACNIC, we collaborated with Internet Society and LACTLD to come up with a pre-LACIGF seminar webinar that we conducted twice, once in Spanish and once in English. And during this webinar, we put focus on two main initiatives here, one being MICLAC, which is a mapping of national internet governance initiatives across Latin America and the Caribbean. And that initiative is being spearheaded by Dr. Carolina Aguirre of the University of San Andres in Buenos Aires. Some of you may be familiar with Carolina in a former capacity as the general manager of LACTLD. And we also gave a highlight of the work, the 2017 report that was done by the Global Information Society Watch. And that work, or that report, was done by Valerian Betancourt of APC, the Association for Progressive Communications. And some of the key findings that we had during that webinar, we spoke about 3 IGF configurations or compositions of the internet governance multi-stakeholder models. Earlier, we used to speak about the simplified RFC model that was very prominent among engineers to gain consensus on a very narrow focus. These were the days when we spoke about internet governance purely from the perspective of technical coordination. But as the internet grew commercially from 1996 onwards, we see that there is a second configuration there, which is a US-led model in terms of ICANN and its development of the ICANN board, community, and org. And of course, that also signaled greater complexity in terms of what we consider to be internet governance. There are a lot of issues that arose that were pertinent to what we'll call the content and applications level of the internet. A lot of sociological, economic, legal, cultural, etc. Now, since the Net Mundial event, we have identified a third type of IG model composition, which is a mixed regime, where you're seeing the intersection of multi-stakeholder spaces along with multilateral policy venues. So for instance, there is discussion about IGF at traditional forums such as the WTO, when they're talking about e-commerce chapters, etc. So there's a mixed feeling right now, and that would be also linked to the second point here, waves of institutional NRI development across the region. We have the period from WSIS up until Net Mundial, where we have seen a certain level of national initiatives growing, which were most of the times important just to be able to track global trends. But in particular, from 2014 onwards, internet governance has become a greater focus on international policy agenda, and we consider a second wave of initiatives. Most of the initiatives across Latin America and the Caribbean have started from 2014 onwards. Before that, we have probably had Brazil, which is now about to celebrate its 8th national IGF. So the rationale behind these NRIs, we discussed that some of the key motivations behind them. One, this information would have come from the national initiatives that Dr. Carolina and others would have interviewed. One of the key rationales was to become a focal point for IG discussions within the country, so that's locally. Another would have been to develop the multi-stakeholder practices in the experience of internet governance. And thirdly, to promote a national space to follow the international global trends in internet governance. And then there's an other category. Why we felt this important to highlight, for the most part, when starting a national IGF, it is important to do sensitization and the like. But what we have observed through these research projects is that initiatives that have been established for a long time eventually lose interest and lose participation unless there is a constant focus on the impact that the initiative could have. So for initiatives that were established simply to do sensitization, after a point in time, this no longer had the effect that it was initially established for. And therefore, in addition to discussing issues, it was important for national communities to go back to the drawing board and see how can their national initiative have greater impact on the local landscape, and in particular, when it comes to local digital development. So moving along, from the Global Information Society Watch report, it was these three components were identified as being the conditions or the preconditions for successful national initiatives. And the conditions are agency, that capacity to act, the recognition of having pre-choice, social compact, the willingness to cooperate for greater or public good, and of course, the active exercise of democracy, not only during an electoral process, but actively defending rights, mobilizing societies that mobilize more tend to have more successful national IGFs. So moving along, when it came to the LACIGF, in terms of the LACIGF process, these are just some of the highlights I wanted to put. We have a call for hosts that usually open from the month of December until mid-March. We have a renewal of the members of the steering committee. And we also have a call for issues, which is an open survey that we conduct, receiving the topics we would like to discuss at the LACIGF. And for LACIGF 11, we had 10 sessions. Most of those topics came from the community, and the steering committee chose 2 of those topics to discuss. So looking at the issue areas, and there are many, but fortunately, I'll leave the slides available to you. I'm going to just touch on some of the attention-grabbing ones here. Session 1, dealing with data protection alternatives for the Latin American Caribbean region, focusing on rights. It dealt with how can we ensure that rights are maintained, that personal data is protected, and still enable environments to support innovation, digital services, big data, and the like. That was one of the key issues that we discussed. We have, for instance, concerns about net neutrality and the future of the internet. And there we discussed the gaps between high income, low income users, different types of usage patterns and perspectives from the private sector and to society organizations. We have, for instance, session 4, which dealt with threats to freedom of expression. And there is where the community unpacked the phenomenon of fake news, the impact that disinformation campaigns have on the citizenry and on electoral processes. We have, for instance, session 6 that dealt with challenges, best practices when it comes to managing community networks in Latin America and Caribbean. Community networks is one of the key areas of focus for many actors, for LACNIC, in terms of its FRIDA program, which is the Regional Fund for Digital Innovation, in terms of the work that the Internet Society is doing at this time. And therefore, at the LACIGF, we sought to come together and speak about some of the key challenges that we will have when it comes to establishing community networks. Some of them revolved around issues of getting spectrum to be able to run community networks. We have session 7, which dealt with breakout groups. And among these breakout groups, the topic of natural disaster preparedness, I think, is one that is of the utmost importance to the Caribbean. Speaking about protecting critical infrastructure, business continuity, what happened at the time of a hurricane, or in parts of Central America of a volcanic eruption, and how do we, from the internet standpoint, regroup and come together to ensure continuity of our societies, our economies. There as well, there was a very poignant discussion on internet shutdowns. On the one hand, it was important to recognize the role that restriction systems play, for instance, firewalls for management purposes. But on the other hand, this discussion on internet shutdowns dealt with shutdowns that were motivated by policy objectives that may not necessarily meet those policy objectives, and as a result have more harmful effect on the operation of the internet. And we spoke as well, as you will see here, you have the presentation to go through the topics, the challenges and opportunities when it comes to using massive data algorithms, automated decision-making, how can Latin American citizens challenge decisions that were taken automatically by algorithms based in North America. So it's the whole question of bias being integrated into coding, and how do we fight against that? How do we ensure there's equity, there is fairness when it comes to the development of automated systems. Next, LACIGF will be in La Paz, Bolivia, from the 5th to 9th of August. I will encourage each and every one of you to come. There will be a fellowship program that will be announced shortly on the LACIGF website, that's lacigf.org. And the reason why I will encourage everyone from this room to come is that it is important for us to have diversity, for us to have multiple perspectives in developing a Latin American Caribbean viewpoint on what are the issues that face us, what are the issues that affect us the most, and how we can address these issues on a global platform. But it would be remiss of me to be up at this lectern and not speak about Líderes. Líderes is a support program run by LACNIC, where we give support to national initiatives, some national youth, those type of initiatives on the national scale. And we also give support to the coordinators of national initiatives to come to the LACIGF and present some of their findings and their experiences at the level of LACIGF. So Líderes is now open. Feel free to have a discussion with me at any time about how you can benefit from Líderes. And without further ado, I know the time is near. There is how you can apply for Líderes, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kevon. I'll move right along and into our final update, and it comes from the UN IGF Secretariat. I'll introduce again Ms. Anja Gengo to give us the update. Anja, you still there?
Hi. Sorry, Nigel.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry,
Please.
I'm a WebEx person more from experience.
Yes.
Well, thank you. I'll just try to share a couple of slides with you, and I hope you can see it now on your screen. First of all, I would like to thank you for the opportunity, and of course to greet all the participants. Now I can see quite a number of participants in the room thanks to your camera, and of course to thank the previous speakers, which I think raised a lot of important points. So this will be, from my side, a very brief overview of what is happening with all the national and regional and youth IGFs in the IGF Secretariat collaboration. And also I will provide a very brief update on the preparatory process for the 14th IGF that will be in Berlin in November this year. So I think I may go very quickly through these slides because the way I see it, the Caribbean region is quite developed when it comes about the presence of the IGF processes on national and regional level. And my previous speakers also can explain briefly the nature of the NRI. So I'm not going to quickly go through it. You know that the national and regional IGFs in the form that they're taking now are not mandated directly by the World Summit on the Information Society Tunis agenda, But the Tunis agenda did advise and encourage the development of the multi-stakeholder processes on the national and regional levels, and the communities have decided that having an IGF form of this development is actually the most effective mechanism to address the internet policy.
Excuse me, Anja.
Yes.
They asked if you could run the presentation on full screen. So put it on
Okay.
presentation mode.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I see. Is
Yeah.
it better now?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
Great. So as I said, that's the nature of the NRIs. The IGF Secretariat has conducted a formal process of recognizing all IGFs that adhere to the key IGF principles, and in that sense, upon recognition, listing them on the IGF website as officially recognized. I will just very briefly say that those key principles that we are looking once we receive the request from the communities to be recognized is that, first of all, the process is bottom-up, that it's open and transparent, inclusive and non-commercial, and of course that the process is multi-stakeholder. This doesn't mean only that you have the multi-stakeholder structure in the formation of the initiative, but also in any kind of action that you take related to the initiative, such, for example, is the organization of sessions and so on. That's where it's very important to be multi-stakeholder. We're very proud on the document that's called the NRIs Toolkit that was produced thanks to the NRIs, I believe in 2016. And that document is still the only document that was translated to 6 UN languages, thanks again to the various communities from the national and regional IGFs that did that important work voluntarily. The youth engagement is also something that's very important for the IGF. I understand also that it's very important for the Caribbean IGF process, which we're very pleased to hear. We worked 2 years ago on a very important, I would say, document called the Youth Engagement at the IGF that described the formations of the youth engagement through the youth IGF initiatives. And that document is available in English language on the IGF website. As I said, the NRIs are completely organic. They are independent, and that's very important for us, completely autonomous. The nature of the IGF Secretariat's work with the NRIs and the NRIs with the Secretariat is of collaborative nature. So there is no reporting mechanism, there's no hierarchy. It's actually just one clear, healthy understanding that only by working together we can actually make a change for having better internet. So far, the network is really growing, and I would say it's an evolutionary growth. So currently there are 114 officially recognized national, regional, and youth IGFs, and you can see on this graph that we have 82 countries that are running their IGF processes, 17 regions, and 15 communities on usually on a level of a country, sometimes even a region, that are organizing their own IGF processes. The global spread is quite well balanced. I hope you can see this map. And I would say that the Caribbean region is quite rich when it comes about the national IGFs. But what's, I think, even more important than that number is the fact that there's a very good quality of communication and collaboration between the IGF initiatives present in the Caribbean region, and I would even say even broader in the Latin American region and the Caribbean together. And that's actually very positive, and we always outline that as an example of good mechanism of cooperation in addressing the internet governance matters. So what are we expecting from the NRI's work for 2019? Traditionally, as you know, since the last 3 years, 3 IGFs, the IGFs were working together toward organizing a joint main session. That main session was organized always by the NRIs in a bottom-up manner. Next week, we will know the results of the bottom-up call for topics for all NRIs. And based on that results, we will know what will be the topic for this year. Last year, it was the evolution of internet governance, kind of focus on the multi-stakeholder approach. And this year, Actually, I'm not going to say anything, but maybe just a small hint that I think there will be a surprise in the shift of the topic compared to the last year. We traditionally, aside of the main session for the past 2 IGFs, so Geneva and Paris, we're organizing the so-called collaborative sessions. So those are the sessions where we have the NRIs from different regions partnering on a topic of mutual interest and organizing an interactive session for the wider IGF community. Last year we had 5 sessions, and those are quite interesting formats and concepts. We will continue working on that also for this year. So as I said, next week we will communicate the results of the call for topics for the NRI. So based on that result, we will also know what will be the topics for these collaborative sessions. The NRI's coordination session will also happen this year. It's a very important open work meeting between the wider community, all NRIs, colleagues from the Department of Economic and Social Affairs of the UN based in New York. The MAG chair always joins, the head of the IGF Secretariat, and usually a number of important organizations that are also critically important to maintaining the process because they are basically the donors. So we will organize that session as well. It will be on a particular agenda, and that agenda will be defined a bit later, probably during summertime. The IGF village is probably as a concept known to you. It consists of a number of booths where organizations are showcasing their work. So the NRIs jointly will have one booth where we will be trying to engage more with the community and explaining what and who are the NRIs, how people can connect. We will make a schedule, so basically you have one NRI always represented there during the day for an hour or 2. Aside of that, the NRIs are very important to us. They're not probably, but for sure, the key partners and collaborators for the IGF secretariats to understand the nature, the essence of the problems and issues in certain countries, in certain regions. And based on that knowledge and those inputs, the IGF intersessional work really benefits a lot. I will come a bit later to that intersessional work to explain the forms of it, but in any case, the NRIs contribute with their concrete expert opinions, publications, reports, and so on. And then we always hire every year consultants that are doing an analytical overview of everything that's received and providing a final output document to be presented at the annual IGF meeting. We hope that for IGF 2019, we will be presenting a new publication on the NRIs. That publication will look at the importance of the IGF processes to be established on local levels. And it will also look kind of more detailedly on the practices of the NRIs. So for instance, the Caribbean IGF definitely will be an example of good practice on how to successfully run an IGF process with some specificities that you as an initiative have. I will just move a bit to the updates on the 14th IGF that you know will be hosted by the government of Germany in Berlin from 25th to 29th of November. A lot of changes happened this year, and we're actually all eager to see how the final product will look like in Berlin. So one of the key updates and key change that the multi-stakeholder advisory group of the IGF decided is that this year, for the first time, I believe, in the past 13 IGFs, we will have a focused program of the IGF on 3 concrete topics. So there will be the data governance, digital inclusion, and security, safety, stability, and resilience. In practice, this will mean that all the sessions, the nature of those sessions, will feed into one of these 3 thematic tracks or topics. The call for sessions are now closed. The MAG is very busy at this time. They're evaluating almost 300 workshops that were received and trying to see how many workshops will be approved to be presented at the IGF in Berlin. The number of open forums were also received as requests. So the IGF Secretariat is looking into those. Usually, as you know, those are reserved for governments and intergovernmental organizations and bigger international treaty-based organizations. We have a number of dynamic coalitions that submitted requests as well. So flash sessions or the so-called lightning sessions. So all of that is now under evaluation. The final stage in that evaluation will be during the 3rd IGF MAG meeting and open consultations. It will be from 5th to 7th of June in Berlin. And hopefully the schedule will be then announced shortly after that meeting. The day zero, as you know, last year in Paris, it was exceptional. We didn't have a day zero. And I have to say that we actually felt the effect. The day zero is usually a pre-day kind of warming up for the IGF. We're very happy that we will have it this year, and we'll continue with that regular practice. I think the day zero this year will be very interesting for the community that will come to Berlin or maybe participate online, because it will include a very interesting high-level segment. I'm saying interesting because the composition of the invitees will be, I think, quite interesting for all of us that are eager to see change in the internet governance ecosystem. We hope to see many of you in Berlin, but we understand that Berlin is not that close to the Caribbean. The tickets are quite expensive. Berlin is probably not the most economical city. So the government of Germany, as our host country, is really committed to have the best possible IGF this year compared to all previous, and also having in mind that many will not be able to afford to travel to Berlin to be there in person. The government of Germany actually helped the IGF Secretariat and invested concrete funds to call for travel support for about 80 to maybe 100 participants. So that call for travel support is announced on the IGF website. You can go through the eligibility criteria. You can see that mostly we are hoping to have supported stakeholders from developing countries, ideally least developed countries, small island developing states, landlocked developing countries, and also to respond to the call from the Secretary General of the United Nations that was delivered during the last year's IGF in Paris, where we need to engage those that are missing, those that are weak voices at the IGF. We also have to engage new disciplines, new expertise that may be underrepresented at the IGF historically. So this call for travel support will allow us that. We call for the help and collaboration of all national and regional IGFs. If we want to bring diversity to the IGF, we need to know which prominent individuals we can identify and contact in certain countries and regions. And from this small office in Geneva where we're sitting, sometimes it's very difficult and challenging, but we are encouraged because we have very healthy communication with all the national and regional IGFs. And in that sense, I hope the Caribbean IGF will help us to identify stakeholders from the Caribbean region that could be supported to, through this call for travel support, come to the IGF, enrich the IGF meeting, but also when they go back home, impact the community in Caribbean from the gained experience and knowledge. So that's the goal, and I will be speaking more detailedly with Nigel as the coordinator and focal point for the Caribbean IGF for the IGF Secretariat about details and procedures on that. But I'm kindly inviting you all to visit the IGF website and apply for the travel support if you're in need and if you think you're eligible. Finally, I did mention during the opening ceremony that the renewal process for the next year's multi-stakeholder advisory group is open. We are receiving the nominations until 30th of June 2019. As you know, the MAG advises the Secretary General on the program of the and schedule of the IGF annual meeting. So this MAG that will be renewed by 1/3 of its membership will be advising for the next IGF cycle that we will be announcing during the Berlin IGF. So you are more than welcome and really invited and encouraged to apply for this MAG call. We actually had a number of excellent MAG members coming from the Caribbean region, so we know there's really an excellent potential and excellent expertise in the region. So we're looking forward to receive your nominations, and And I'm sure the Secretary General will make the best final decision on appointing the new members. I said I'm going to come back to the IGF intersessional work. We would like to invite all of you present here on site and online to help the IGF become even more relevant and even more better. So you can do that in various ways, but one of the most effective ways is if you could contribute to the intersessional work. We have 17 dynamic coalitions that are working throughout the year on their focus topics. One that I would like to maybe outline here is the DC on small island developing states in the internet economy, just because it involves a lot of colleagues that we know and work closely with from the Caribbean region that are living in small island developing states. Aside of that, we do have 4 very interesting, quite demanding in terms of the substance, best practice forums. Those are focused on gender and access, cybersecurity, Internet of Things, big data, and artificial intelligence, and also on the local content. So these best practice forums have regular bi-monthly virtual meetings. They call for contributions. Contribution can be an expert opinion from your side. It can be a report from your side, any kind of publication that you think it could help. The only thing if you would like to contribute is you should do is subscribe to the mailing list or contact the IGF Secretariat, and we will guide you on how to contribute to these. I think I usually attend those calls, and I think the calls for the BPFs are quite interesting, quite, as I said, demanding, and we're very much dependent on your expertise and willingness to help. With this, I will just conclude this presentation with, of course, calling you to book your calendars for last week of November 25 to 29 and come to Berlin. Join us for the 14th annual IGF meeting. Apply for travel support. In case you will face financial challenges, then please do participate online. We're trying and investing a lot of resources to have our online participants treated as on-site participants. But I do understand for Caribbean region, maybe the time zone is not really helpful in that case, but I'm sure we'll try to find a way. What you can expect, what I mentioned previously, is really the best possible IGF so far, only because the IGF host country this year is really investing a lot of funds, a lot of human resources in having this meeting a success. So for now, what we know is we can expect more than 2,000 participants from more than, on average, 150 different countries. As for the sessions, we can expect more than 170 sessions. Of course, the meeting is, as you know, always and will be multi-stakeholder. So you can expect to have a lot of representatives from government, civil society, technical communities, private sector, stakeholders from around the world coming together, sitting around one table and discussing the priority topics. I hope that wasn't speaking too quickly, first of all, but please, if you have any questions, you can ask me now. I will, of course, be online here. And also you can write to us. This is the email address that you can see, igf@un.org. Please do contact us for any concern that you have, and let us know if you have any suggestions for making the IGF even better. Nigel, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anja. That was very comprehensive, and I think your encouragement for Caribbean participation or nominations for the MAG won't fall on deaf ears, and also it's good that you put there some of the opportunities we have for participating in the intersectional work, like the dynamic coalitions and so on.